my colleague Sarah Muter, we were the nominators of today's speaker, Tim Whitmarsh, for this series. So let me just explain very quickly by way of format that I'm going to introduce Tim in the series today, and I will moderate the first and second session, and Sarah will moderate the third and fourth lectures. I should also say, perhaps by way of an explanation to Tim, that as in typical Chicago style, we will begin today with a short panegyric, but there will be no panegyric to follow in subsequent weeks. What will follow hereafter are just 10 weeks of brutal criticism. So, well, trust your favorable welcome to Chicago. So anyhow, it's a very great pleasure today to present to you this year's speaker of the Classics lecture series, Tim Whitmarsh, who is the A.G. Levantis Professor of Greek Culture at the University of Cambridge. This series comes about through a generous grant from the Provost's office and brings a distinguished speaker to the Classics Department for one report. The speaker is invited to deliver a series of 4 lectures with the hope and expectation of a volume to follow to be published by the University of Chicago Press. And the speaker also conducts a graduate seminar, Tim's seminar, entitled Atheism in the Greeks, and meet for those who are interested on Fridays from 1:30 to 4:20. As some of you will know, the seminar tracks up to a point the subject of Tim's next book, which is forthcoming from Conference in a matter of weeks, Battling the Gods, Atheism in the Ancient World. I'm looking at that. Now, I could easily fill the time allotted for this introduction by listing Tim's publications, but as this sort of information is now easily available on websites, I want instead to try and convey some of my own esteem for Tim's qualities as a scholar and the achievement of his published work. I think of Tim, who's the source of the nomination, as the very model of a 21st century classicist, or one might say post-classicist, and I'll come back to that term in just a bit. By 21st century classicists, I mean that Tim brings together the traditional tools of classical philology, close reading, deep attention to the historical development of the languages of literary production, profound control of our canon, with a quite extraordinary familiarity and fluency in the critical tools of contemporary literary engagement. This was already evident in his initial work, a great first book, Greek Literature and the Roman Empire, The Politics of Imitation. In that book, Tim focused on the politics of literary production among Greeks of the High Roman Empire, both in their sense of posteriority or relatedness in relation to some earlier version of themselves, and the imbrication of their projects and perhaps of all cultural production in the matrices of power under Roman rule. A minor current there, is relevant in a sort of ongoing way to his work, focused on the notion of the literary as a kind of violent, sometimes helpful, but also often misleading anachronism in our encounter with the ancient world. Now, since then, Tim's work has advanced along many fronts. He has moved backwards chronologically, he's produced a survey of all of Greek literature, but he's also stimulated and himself contributed to an ongoing, the opening up of new lines of inquiry into largely, but not exclusively, Greek intellectual cultures of the Roman Empire, notably with edited volumes on ordinary knowledge in the Roman Empire with Jason Koenig, and local knowledge and micro-identities in the imperial Greek world. In all of this, there is a concern for situating the problematics of identity formation in both the widest, but also the most particularized contexts. The world of the Greeks being vast, and Greekness itself being at once a universalizing and hegemonic concept, but also the diaspora populations being always also at the very same time deeply in place. Now, in recent work, Tim has affiliated himself with and helps to lead a community of scholars committed, one might say, to the relationship of classics to classicism. A simplistic but I hope non-trivial way to describe one concern of this community is that it seeks to render all of us more self-aware about the ways in which our notionally disinterested forms of inquiry are calced onto aesthetic, moral, and political systems of evaluation, and thus, frankly, of inclusion and exclusion with very deep roots. As Tim has observed, both Plutarch and Helios Aristides were classicists, and who would want to be one of them? One might likewise observe that our periodizations, or many of our periodizations of Greek and Latin literature, derive over and over again from those already advanced and affirmed in the ages of ancient literary criticism in Alexandria, in the decades before and immediately after Augustus, and again under the Severns, and that's even before we get to the 19th century. The term post-classicism thus marks an engagement with the project of an engagement with the project of the classical from the inside. The effort is something like to show the classics using its own tools how much bigger and more exciting the world actually is. And with that, I want to simply introduce the lecture for today, Homer and the Land.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Cliff, for that generous introduction, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure and an honour to be here. My title today is actually, Homer and the Land is the title of the series. My title today is Homer on the Assassination of Roman Emperors. Now, 1919 years and 19 days ago today, the Emperor of Domitian was assassinated by his own courtiers. Some 130 years after the event, an Athenian polymath named Lucius Flavius Philostratus, the preeminent Greek writer of his day, included an account of this event in his Lives of the Sophists, which incidentally gives us the phrase the second sophistic. This text consists largely of short sketches of the star orators of the Roman era. One of the first biographies is that of Dio Chrysostom, a philosopher sophist of the late 1st and early 2nd centuries CE. The death of Domitian, Philostratus tells us, happened while Dio was visiting some Roman soldiers. Passage 1 on your handouts. He often visited military camps in the rags he was wont to wear, and after the assassination of Domitian, when he saw that the troops were beginning to mutiny, he couldn't contain himself at the sight of the disorder that had broken out, but stripped off his rags and leapt onto a high altar and began his harangue with the verse, "Then Odysseus of his many counsels stripped him of his rags." And having said this, and thus revealed he was no beggar, nor what they believed him to be, but Dio the sage, he delivered a spirited and energetic indictment of the tyrant, and he convinced the soldiers that they would be wiser if they acted in accordance with the will of the Roman people. Now, I have a particular affection for this biography. It was the subject of my first publication in 1998. I argued there, inter al, that Dio is portrayed as a literary role player, and he uses the performance of the Homeric line to interact with his own self-presentation in front of the Roman soldiers. The quotation comes from Homer's Odyssey, from the very start of Book 22, where the beggar casts off his clothing and reveals himself to be the returning Odysseus, before launching a salvo of arrows upon the suitors. It was a famously dramatic passage in antiquity. Plato's Ion, for example, cites it precisely as an episode that would, I'm quoting, especially thrill the audience. We'll see this passage presently. In our case, Dio casts himself as a new Odysseus, and indeed casts Domitian as the wicked usurper of the Roman imperial household, a usurper who's finally getting his comeuppance, just as Antinous and the others got their comeuppance at Odysseus' hand. Philostratus, here as elsewhere, seems to be adopting an ironic stance towards Dio's pretensions. He seems to take pleasure in the mismatch between the actions of the philosopher and his literary model, whereas Odysseus personally assassinates Antinous, the false pretender, and thereby causes chaos at the Ithacan throne room. Dio has nothing whatsoever to do with this dispatching of Domitian. Instead, Dio proceeds to mollify the mutinying troops with a long-distance critique of the tyrant, now safely dead, and encourages them to adopt a complacent attitude towards Rome. In Philostratus' telling, it's hinted that Dio falls rather comically short of the intertextual model he claims. Now, my interest today lies more specifically in the dynamic enactment of this Homeric quotation. The naked gymnos Dio quotes the words of Homer's narrator describing Odysseus denuding himself, whom no fair racket. Those aware of the wider context will know that the following line has Odysseus leaping onto the great threshold, a phrase recalled by Dio's leaping onto the high altar. In the Odyssey, Odysseus at this point reveals his identity that he's not in fact a beggar. And similarly, Dio too discloses himself, to be no beggar, but, in the words of the translator, Dio the wise, Philos. But things are, as they tend to be, rather more complex than this. The moment of self-identification for Dio is paradoxically underlined by the arrogation not of a daimonic identity, but of an Odyssean persona. Dio is simultaneously revealing himself to be who he is and reveling in the literary roleplay that cast him in the role, perhaps perhaps unfortunately, as Odysseus. So in this case, perhaps Dio Hosophos means not Dio the wise, but Dio the sophist, Dio the protean manipulator of public guises. In these lectures, I move backwards in time from the world of Dio Chrysostom, the world of the second sophistic, to archaic Greece. My aim is to offer what I hope are some new thoughts on the role of Homeric and Hesiodic poetry in their contemporary world. Studies of early Greek epic have been gripped, in my view, to the point of near asphyxiation by questions of the origination of the texts, whether oral or neo-analytical, and about high aesthetics. I don't for 1 minute mean to deny the value of such approaches as a whole, of course, but they do seem rooted in romantic and idealistic traditions that are not aligned with the direction of current thinkers in the humanities. Current thinking which is moving more towards the bodily, the sensory, the performative, the agential, the object-orientated. So in the course of these lectures, I'll be arguing that early epic can be situated much more narrowly than it has been in the cultural politics of archaic Greece. I want to ground these poems. That's one reason for giving them the title I have given them. But only one reason I want to reveal my entire hand at this point. But now, though, I begin, for the process of this lecture, with what I hope will be a new way of conceiving of the archaic performance of epic, focusing on the material body of the performer. I'll argue today that we need to imagine archaic poetry not as an abstract body of text, but as embodied, actuated, resonant in the here and now of performance, just as it was in the case of Dio's performance of that single line in front of the retreat. Focusing on the performed body in all its dynamic contexts will help us to move away in later lectures from idealist readings of the contents of these poems and help us situate them more meaningfully within the archaic world. Now, the performance contexts of early epic are hard to reconstruct with any certainty whatsoever. The Odyssey famously portrays two bards, two apoidoi, Demodocus and Phemius, who sing episodes of heroic and divine narrative to the accompaniment of the lyre performings at banquets and royal courts. But do these represent the anticipated mise-en-scène of epic performance? Well, certainly, Homer and Hesiod describe their own activity as aegein, singing in this way. And Homer in Theogony seems to count himself amongst the andres apoidoi kai kitharistai, the men who sing and play the kithara, the guitar. Yet the external evidence of archaic performance seems to point in a very different direction. From the late archaic period, we hear of performance by rhapsodes, principally the Homeridai, or descendants of Homer. Rhapsodes seem to have been characterized by the possession of a staff rather than a lyre. You see it there. A staff, sometimes called a rhabdos, from which rhapsodos could be pseudo-etymologically be derived. Rhapsodes seem to have performed epic by chanting rather than singing, and at public festivals rather than at the court scenario described in the Odyssey. The earliest direct evidence for rhapsodes comes in the 5th century and comes in the form of references in Pindar and Herodotus and vase paintings like the one in front of you. But Herodotus claims that rhapsodic competitions were banned by Cleisthenes of Sicyon, who ruled circa 600 to 570 BCE. And if this is true, it suggests that rhapsodes were already entrenched in Greek culture in the early 6th century. And what follows, I assume that rhapsodic culture was indeed an archaic phenomenon, and indeed contemporaneous with the creation of early epic. Now, the reconciliation of these two portraits, the rhapsode and singer, has occupied much scholarship on Homer and Hesiod. The majority view is Walter Burkert's, that the apoidos is the older phenomenon, the improvising oral poet. The rhapsodos, on the other hand, follow in the canonical script. By the time the text is formalized enough, the rhapsode begins to develop the script, as it were. Now, a significant modification of this position was proposed last year by José González in his important book, The Epic Rhapsody of His Craft. González is a Nagian in that he believes that the creative shaping and booming of the Homeric and Hesiodic poems occurred through oral performance. They weren't composed in one initial moment, but they were actually shaped over a long period of time through oral performance, and oral performance at Cambrian festivals. His argument then is that rhapsodes were, in a sense, creative composers in their own right, who had a decisive influence on the composition of the text. Any script to which they referred was not a text already fixed and finalised by writing, but a fluid body of traditional song. According to González, the portrait of the small-scale oidos in the royal palace that we find in the Odyssey is an archaeising touch, which conceals the reality of poetic performance in the formative era of their epic composition. Now, although our approaches differ in fundamental ways, I'm happy to adopt González's position on the primacy of the rhapsode, not just as the actual medium for the performance of the poems, but as the one intended and envisaged within the poems, and this does go beyond what González said. For the rest of this lecture, I want to think through what this actually means in practice. To do so, I borrowed briefly and presumptuously from Alfred Gell's influential ideas about the anthropology of art. For Gell, the artwork is an agent in its own right, an agent he calls the index. The scene of the artwork involves the interplay between four agents: the index itself, the artwork, its artist, the creator, let's say, its prototype, so it depicts its subject, here will be the rhapsode, and its recipient, its target audience. So if you think about this as the image in Gell's term, that itself is the index. The creator of it, Pierre Hardy's painter, is the artist, the prototype of the rhapsode, and the target audience is the person for whom this was intended. Now, when we view an artwork, Gell argues, we infer, or to use his slightly more abstruse terminology, we abduct the agency of each of these figures. We reconstruct it in our mind. That's what we're doing when we look at this. We're thinking about the play of all these different agents. Now, I don't want to get too enmeshed in the details of Gell's various schemes, but what I want to do is to focus on the primary encounter with the artwork itself, the index. This is the moment where it all happens. This is the moment, our encounter with this index is the moment where we start thinking about the play of all these agencies. And of course, the artwork of Gell's scheme has an agency in its own right. The index is the most important transmitter of agency. We don't perceive the artist, we have to infer her or his intentions. We don't perceive the prototype, we infer her or his role in the creation of the world. That's to say, we have to decide ourselves whether the rhapsode stood there posing, commissioned it, or whatever. We may perceive the intended recipient, we may even be that intended recipient, but we don't have to perceive it. It's not important for us. So for an analysis of this picture, we are not the recipient, but we still have an idea in our head of who the intended recipient of this artwork is. But what is indispensable, more than anything else, is the index itself, the artwork, which triggers all these inferential processes in the reader. It's in this way that I see Homeric performance as central. Since that's how most viewers in antiquity would have encountered these poems, they would have encountered a real embodied rhapsode standing before them in the performance space of the ancient festival or wherever. It would have been a multi-sensory experience, taking sight as well as sound, and even touch by proxy, since the rhapsode carries in his hand the stick. So we imagine what it'd be like to hold that stick. So it won't have been an abstract text, it would have been an embodied text in the actual performance. From this perspective, we can, I think, put forward a hypothesis based on Gell's terminology, which explains the aoidos rhapsode distinction. The aoidos, the bard, the singer, isn't simply, as González thinks of it, an archaic relic introduced to give the poems a patina of antiquity, but an embodiment of the artist, the original creator of the poem. The rhapsodic performance, meanwhile, is the index, the artwork itself, as it's encountered in the real world. So we see the rhapsode performing, that's the equivalent of the artwork here, and we infer the presence behind it of an original aoidos. The aoidos then is, if you will, a fictionalized projection of Gell's artist, invoked at the moment of performance. On this model, the dynamics of performance require the formal separation of two creative agents. The originating oikos, the person who originally composed the song, the singer, who is absent from the performance scenario, needs to be imagined, and the performing rhapsodos, who is also in the sense a kind of artist, but his performing body functions simultaneously as index, an artwork to be perceived. So the rhapsode is simultaneously a source of artist and an index, an artwork. Now let me, at this point, put some flesh on the Lord's bone. Let's turn to a very familiar passage, the poetic initiation scene on the start of Hesiod's Theogony, the so-called Dichter Vaya, or a hate phrase which smacks of tragic Protestantism. So you have this on your handout at number 3 on the handout. One time they taught Hesiod a beautiful song while he was pasturing lambs on holy Helion. And this speech the goddesses spoke first of all to me, the Olympian muses, the daughters of Aegis-bearing Zeus. Field-running shepherds, ignoble disgrace of mere fairies. We know how to say many false things similar to genuine ones, but we know when we wish how to proclaim true things. So spoke great Zeus with great daughters, and they plucked a staff, a branch of luxuriant laurel, a marvel, and gave it to me, and they breathed a divine voice into me, so that I might glorify what will be and what was before. And they commanded me to sing of the race of the blessed ones, who always are, but always sing themselves first and last. Now, if I'm right, this episode explains the origination of the song, the apoideia, as distinct from the performance. The creation of the song is an event set at an abstract point in the past, pop, as we call it, poter, once upon a time. This happened once in the past, as a result of a dramatic coincidence between the divine and the mortal. That past event was the moment of origination of the poem, when the muses, very first of all, the sister in line 24, spoke to him and taught him how to read. That primal moment, however, is indissolubly linked to all future performances of the song by the muses' command at the end of this passage, "Ien a eidem," always sing. And there's a pseudo-etymological pun going on here, associating singing, a eidem, with the eternal a, always, repetition of the author's song in multiple different contexts. This eternality is also incidentally annexed to the eternal existence of the gods. So we can note Ien in line, in the same metrical position in line 33. The gods are always existing as well as the song. Now the event that a real-life audience witnesses then is one of but a perpetual series of possible theogonic poems. But this limitless, multiplex performative flux is all rooted in a single highly authoritative moment of original creation. From this perspective then, you can see the author function, the identification of Hesiod as the creator, and the gifting to him of a biography of a shepherd on Mount Helicon, as a reflex of the real-life performer's need to authorize the performance by indexing, to use Joel's term, a moment of primary origination. It's not in any sense at all a reflection of the actual historical process of composition. It's an effect of the act of performance. The Hesiodic model, however, introduces subtleties and complexities. First of all is the issue of the first person. The Dichter Vaya introduces Hesiod in the third person as the recipient of the muse's instruction at an abstract point in the past. In line 24, however, this person becomes me, in Greek. In terms of the performative basis, this pronoun transforms the rhapsode into a revivified embodiment of that primal muse-inspired Hesiod that becomes Hesiod at that point. This coincidence between the two is re-emphasized in lines 31 to 4, where the muse's gift of a staff and a divine voice references the reality of the performance, voice being the voice on the staff being the trade tools of the rhapsode, and not the singer. The singer is identified by the lyre, the rhapsode is identified by the staff. So the rhapsodic performance then is imagined as connecting to the original moment of composition through the person, indeed through the body of the performer himself, who is partially identified with Hesiod, the author of the song. And the rhapsode staff actually is the model, is the point, the pivot that connects the performer in the present to the singer of the past. Now at this point we should note that in Hesiod, as in Homer, the act of performance is always referred to using the verb aide, to sing. The specialist discourse of Rhapsody doesn't figure at all in the early epic. The effect of this is to reinforce the sense that the performance in the present, the rhapsodic performance in the present, and the original act of creation of the song are part of the continuous process. So we can understand this rhapsodic action then as a form of role-playing, of impersonation at the time of Hesiod. This much conforms to the ideas of Whitmarsh and Bacchus, both of whom see individual performers of epic as taking on the identity of the original author. So when you sing a bit of Archelaus, you are, in a sense, being Archelaus. Bacchus, for example, argues that Homeric mimesis, and I'm quoting now, denotes not the properties of textual artifact, but a certain kind of poetic action, the representation or representation of the previous performance, with the performer playing the role of Homer, quintessential narrator. So to perform Homer means to play the role of Homer. There is, I think, much more to be said about the nature of epic performance. It's not simply a case of the rhapsode mimicking Hesiod or Homer throughout. For a cynic performer will also take on the roles of the individual characters denoted in the text, the prototypes, to use Gell's terminology. Socrates, in place of Ion, imagines the rhapsode being carried out of yourself. This is number 4 on the handout. This is the second underlying classic in number 4. Are you carried out of yourself? Is your soul in ecstasy suppose yourself to be amongst the scenes you're describing, whether they be difficult or triumph and so forth? Socrates imagines the rhapsode being transported to the scenes you are describing. Now, Plato's ultimate aim is to prove the non-rationality of the rhapsode as a feature, and that's quite alien to the Homeric poem. But I think even so, he's capturing here, albeit obliquely, the role-playing demands placed upon the rhapsode. You actually do, as a rhapsode, have to inhabit an alternative space. You have to come out of yourself. You have to move into the world of the imagination, or the world of the prototype, if you like. Then you notice passing the curious expression of the first underlying passage, which literally means either when you sing Odysseus leaping onto the threshold, and so forth. Now what catches my eye here is the verb aide, to sing. It's not meant literally. We're told at the beginning of the sentence that this is a spoken recitation we're talking about. But what I'm really focusing on here is the direct object, to sing Odysseus. That's what the Greek says. We could take this direct object as defining the content of the song. This is a conventional way of understanding it. In other words, Ion is to sing about Odysseus, to sing of Odysseus. And this is a meaning that's very standard in Greek, it's attested already in Homer. But this seems rather weak in the context. Isn't the point that Io is expected to sing the part of Odysseus, to perform Odysseus, to act Odysseus? And this meaning would fit better Socrates' general line of attack, which is that Io sacrifices his own rational subjectivity in the performer. So the rhapsode, I would say, is encouraged not just to play the roles of Homer and Hesiod, but also to play the roles of the agents within the text. Now, how might we go about parsing the materiality, the embodied nature of this rhapsodic performance? What are the elements that constitute the rhapsodic index? Let's look then to this earliest visual evidence, which comes in the form of this, as I say, this Attic red-figured vase from 490 to 480 BCE, painted by the so-called Theophrades painter. There are, I would submit, 3 elements that distinguish our chap here from a regular system. The first, and the most obvious, depending on where you're sitting, is the stream of words issuing from his lips. And just about with that up there, it's not damage to the surface of the vase, it's words issuing from his lips. Ode of en Turinthia. The first half, otherwise unattested hexameter, or conceivably a pentameter. And that's the first thing, he's speaking metrical words. The second thing is quite obviously the start. We'll come back to this. The third thing is an impressive, multiply folded cloak. Voice, staff, and cloak. These, I would say, constitute the semiotic markers of the rhapsode, the things that define his body as distinct from others. The elements can vary, I should make clear, particularly in later sources where they needed crowns as well. But I think we can stick with these 3 elements for now. I'm actually not going to say very much about voice, partly for reasons of time, and partly because it risks a certain amount of, without a certain amount of nuance, it risks to distracting us from the emphasis on embodiment, and people have discussed the representation of voice within rituals quite a lot anyway. But let's start with a staff. Now, I probably don't need to say that wooden sticks are symbols of authority in many cultures, but let me in any case quickly wheel you through three examples from this continent. Here is a rather handsome jaguar, or ocelot, from the Peruvian Moche culture. So you can see 750, 1000 CE. Here is another Peruvian figure, so much older, depicting the so-called staff god. I can see a lot of staff in his hand here, which is a widespread feature in Peru. And finally, the shaman's staff from Alaska in the 19th century. So we could multiply these examples quite clearly. But the central point that I'm making is the staff is certainly a symbol to reckon with. It's a token of authority. Let's for a minute reflect on the multiple roles that the staff can play within the narrative space of the early epic. One of these roles is quite clearly the royal sceptre, the sceptron, the symbol of authority and the right to speak in public spaces. Passage 5, on which I won't dwell for now. This is the implement wielded by Agamemnon in the Iliad, by the heralds who accompany the and indeed by Odysseus, when he beats up the insurgent Thersites and coerces him into silence, thus dramatizing through violence the royal monopoly on public expression. It can also play the token passed to Telemachus in the Odyssey, when the maturing young man first claims the authority to address the assembly as a symbol of the right to speak, as it partly is in the regal spin. Priests and seers like Calchas in the opening scene of the Iliad also carry a sceptre. And the item has associated with the issuing of just verdicts when he stabbed. So it seems right to conclude with most scholars that the primary association of the staff is with veridical discourse, with what Desmond would call the mastery of truth. But if we think of the staff instead in performative terms, as a prop, it takes on a much wider range of possible roles. In the Iliad and the Odyssey, we hear of the sceptron being used in a variety of ways, not just by figures of authority, but also, for example, by Odysseus, when he's disguised as a beggar. Sceptron can be treated, handled in any number of ways. They can be picked up, they can be passed from one person to another, they can be dropped to the ground, and they can be hurled. We should therefore presumably think of the performer's sceptron and staff as an extension of his performing body, a magnification of the body's own dynamic vitality. In one well-known passage, it's in number 6 on the handout, Antenor describes Odysseus visiting Troy. He was singularly unimpressive to look at, Antenor says. Whenever Odysseus of many wiles arose, he would stand and look down with his eyes fixed on the ground, and his staff he would move neither backwards nor forwards, but would hold still like a man of no understanding. You would have thought him some sort of a churl and nothing but a fool. Now Odysseus, of course, in this passage goes on to speak with masterful eloquence, the words dropping from his mouth like snowflakes. But the strong implication is that a forceful and sophisticated speaker would normally be expected to move his stick around, to rock it backwards and forward. And let's also consider what the word actually means, what sceptron is. At its root is the verb scepte, which can mean either to prop up, hence the sceptron that the beggar carries, a sort of walking stick, or, and this is the interesting point, it can mean to hurl with violence. According to the second meaning, a second noun is formed, skeptos, a thunderbolt. As a symbol of royal power, which derived from the king of the gods, the sceptron surely represents the mortal analogue of Zeus' skeptos, his thunderbolt. Note that in the Iliad, Zeus is said to put the sceptron into the hands of mortal kings, suggesting that it indicates the transference of royal iconography from the god, the thunderbolt, to the human sceptron. Agamemnon's sceptron was indeed forged by Hephaestus for Zeus originally, a manufacturing process that further underlines the symmetry between sceptre and thunderbolt. And incidentally, these two meanings, thunderbolt and sceptre, converge in the Latin derivative scipio. Now, the performer's sceptron could presumably be wielded in such a way as to resemble a thunderbolt to be thrown, with this pose as in the famous Artemisian bonds. So you can imagine that the rhapsode would stand like that with a skeleton in his hand. Now this statue, of course, has often been thought to be of Poseidon rather than Zeus, depending on what implement he held in his hand. The identification of the statue doesn't matter to us one jot, except insofar as ambiguity suggests that the skeleton could be used to depict multiple roles depending on the context. That's to say, if you took a pose like that, with a skeleton in your hand, it could be either Zeus wielding the thunderbolt or Poseidon wielding the trident. Or indeed, for different poses, Dionysus wielding the thyrsus. Or you could be the Rhabdos wielding Circe, Hermes or Athena. By extension, presumably, the Rhabdos could also be used to indicate mortal weapons, a spear, a sword, or the limb of a bow. Now you'll notice that this is a very non-traditional reading of this implement. I'm not focusing narrowly on the semantic range of the word skeleton within the Homeric text, but on the full range of objects with which it could be associated in the act of performance. And more importantly, on the miraculous ability of this plot to facilitate the performing rhapsode's transformation into the object of his impersonation. Let's now sharpen these thoughts and focus them more on the topic in hand, which, as we recall, is the artistic performance of the rhapsode and the social dynamics that it presupposes. The first point to make is that if we imagine that all of these sticks in early epic are indexed by the performer's skeleton, then we can also, as I've already hinted, include the magical rhabdoi wands of Hermes and Circe, and Athena too. Let me note also in passing that the skeleton, like the skeleton, the rhabdos can be repurposed for a number of different roles. We read that rhabdoi we use for example, fishing. But Circe's and Hermes' wands are what I want to focus on for now. Now these two wands are in a way both complementary and opposed to each other. Circe uses her rhabdos to transform Odysseus' crew into animals, materially changing their appearance. In passage 7 on your handout, we hear that they have the heads and voice and bristles and shape of swine, but their minds remain unchanged, just as they were before. The rhabdos thus affects here a superficial change, changes the very superficiate surface of the body, swathing that surface, but not the interior. The interior remains as before. In passage 8, this process is linked to resemblance. They go to the sky in the form of, the translation I think better would be looking like, resembling it. The big word is oikotas. This language of semblance reinforces a sense of the mismatch between inner essence and misleading external superficiality. The rhabdos can make somebody, can't transform the inside, but can transform the exterior presentation. So Circe's rhabdos can then be said to be a kind of mimetic device. It gives something the appearance of something else. Or better still, it could be said to be a histrionic device. It transforms not objects, but people. Hermes' rhabdos, by contrast, is deployed to transform the perception of onlookers. Passage 9 on your handout. He took up the rhabdos, with which he bewitches the eyes of those he selects, and then wakes them again from their sleep. At a primary level, naturally, these words suggest that Hermes has the power to withdraw and grant sleepfulness. He touches your eyes and makes you go to sleep. And this ability to guide humans transitioning between waking and sleep is closely connected with his role as psychopomp, or conveyor of souls to the underworld. But what Homer actually says is that he bewitches the eyes. The emphasis is thus laid on the distorted vision of the universe. Felgane, bewitching, is also used of Circe and her bewitching of Odysseus' crew, and it's in this sense that I see Hermes and Circe as complementary but also opposed. Each magically creates the effect of a simulacrum, but whereas Circe does it by bewitching the thing itself, Hermes does so by bewitching the perception of the onlooker. This doubleness, no doubt, is why it is Hermes specified as Hermes of the golden rhabdos in passage 10. Hermes who meets Odysseus as he travels to Circe's house and gives her the antidote that counteracts her sorcery. So these two rhabdos-bearing figures are equally matched. Hermes is a counterweight to Circe. And the Greeks themselves, as is well known, often assimilated the rhabdos, the one, to the rhapsode's staff, sometimes indeed relating the two pseudo-etymologically. rhapsode is the bearer of the rhabdos. Scholars have long noted the connection between the Homeric language of bewitchment and that of song. Indeed, it's a member of this university, George Walsh, who gave the fullest and cleverest exposition of that. But while it's true that the power of words and song are emphasized in the poems, bewitchment is, I think, also about the power of performance, the rhapsode's ability to translate himself into the guise of another. The rhabdos, the magical counterpart, in Homer at any rate, to the non-supernatural scarecrow, is the token of this ability, what affects this transformation. The rhabdos causes viewers to see bodies in new forms, whether by startling their eyes or veiling those bodies themselves. Indeed, it's the rhapsode's own body, cloaked in the garment, dynamically extended by the stick, that's the most striking transformation and manifestation of this transformative power. Like bodies of Odysseus' crewmen who retain their own minds but resemble, or protas, pigs, the rhapsode maintains his inner identity but provisionally takes on the guise of characters within the poem, or indeed of the author narrator himself. But once we begin to read the Homeric poems in this way, certain important poetic features take on a new light. Take, for example, the epic simile, the Homeric narrator's signature device. What is a simile other than a display, an ostentatious display, of the performer poet's ability to designate one thing as like another thing, to create resemblance in the same way, or in an analogous way at least, to Circe's facility with transformation of the body. Or we could take the Muse's famous assertion in the Theogony poem, back to passage 3 on the handout, the famous assertion of their ability to tell lies as are like the truth, pseudeia etumoisin omoia, which should underline the important, although critically neglected, we can't like to be poured over minutely, we should underline the important role of resemblance, being similar to, the lies are similar to the truth. That's the Muse's gift, that they can create one thing which looks like another. Now, I'm not, of course, claiming that the full meaning of this very complex historical couplet is disclosed by a narrow focus on this image of similitude. In fact, I would say that the central function of the Muse's claim here lies precisely in its emphatic indeterminacy, the fact that it can't be fully deconstructed. But this focus on similitude is undeniably part of the picture, I think it needs to be recognised. Let's acknowledge too the thematic centrality to the plots of both the Iliad and the Odyssey of bodily disguise. The Iliad, of course, famously turns on an act of role-playing, when Patroclus guards himself in Achilles' gear, and for a while convinces the onlookers, both Trojan and Achaean, that he is indeed Achilles. The Odyssey, meanwhile, is of course about the external disguises of its transformation of its subject. Let me consider briefly just two such passages, both of which Athena affects the changes, affects the disguises by means of the rhabdos. So passage 11 from the handout. So saying, Athena touched him with her rhabdos. She withered the handsome flesh on his supple limbs and destroyed the fair hair upon his head. And about all the limbs she put the skin of an aged old man. And she dimmed his two eyes that were before so beautiful. And dressed him in other clothing, a vile, ragged coat, and a tunic, tattered garments, and foul begrimed with filthy smoke. And about him she cast the great skin of a swift deer, stripped of the hair, and she gave him a staff and a miserable leather pouch, full of holes, slung by a twisted cord. Here, Athena employs the woman to transform Odysseus' skin, as Circe did to his crewmen. But she also performs a seemingly separate action, unrelated to the powers of the rhabdos. She gives him a new clothing, an alternative vile rag, rhabdos karokakon, a ketone, a coat, and a deer skin, as well as a scarectron, a staff, and a pouch. Now in performance, this transformation would no doubt be signalled by a gesture involved in the rhapsode's cloak. Remember that another of the signature features of the rhapsode is the possession of the cloak. And of course, by the redesignation of the staff, which had only recently indicated Athena's rhabdos the wand, now is the beggar's scarectron. But what's particularly significant for our purposes, however, is that it points us towards the second marked object used in the performance, precisely the cloak. For the purpose of bodily self-representation, the cloak works in tandem with the stick. The stick indicates the performer's ability to make one thing seem like another when it plays the role of Rabdos. It marks the power to convert the appearance of someone or something else. The cloak, by contrast, indicates the performer's ability to take on a new guise himself, to slip between roles, just as Odysseus is doing here. Now this stick-cloak distinction can for sure be blurred, so the stick can also be part of the costume of disguise as well as it is in this passage. But as a general description of the function of the two objects, the stick and the cloak, and more precisely as a heuristic account of the two modalities of rhapsodic performance, the plurality works. The performing rhapsode is always engaged in these two distinct processes, designating external things and people as other than they are, and himself assuming the role of other people, himself cloaking himself in other guises. Now, this combination of Athena's rhabdos, transforming the skin, and the gift of clothing, transforming the costume, occurs elsewhere in the Odyssey. I think the relevant passages will have that. I don't think there's a go into them in detail here. But let me return in conclusion to Hesiod and to the Muses' gift of the staff in passage 3. I want to draw out a few more points by way of conclusion. The scarectron that the Muses grant Hesiod evidently serves as the iconographic token of the rhapsode's performance impersonation of the original poet, Hesiod. It's the thing that is shared between the rhapsodic performer in the present and the notion of author. It links the two across time and space to shared ownership. The index, to use Gerald's terminology, that's to say the performative spectacle, invokes the agency of the original artist Hesiod in the play of agencies. There are more entrancing details in this description. The staff is said to be a branch of luxuriant laurel. Luxuriant translates erythrelaios, which more literally refers to the branch's capacity to flourish, to palate, that's to say to bear leaves. The Hesiodic scarectron seems to be pulled out of the ground, but nevertheless to retain its life-generating capacity, even once it's been ripped from the earth. With the contrast to the Agamemnon staff, which we're told will never again put out leaves or shoots since it first left its stump in the mountain. How would you read this strange ability of the scarectron? Its magical property seems to be linked to the following sentence, where we're told the Muses breathe a divine voice into me. The staff seems to have the power to animate, to resuscitate, magically to link the past and lead the future to the present. The crucial word, however, and I really want to focus on here, is theaton. The scarectron is theaton, which is dramatically emphasized by enjambment and syntactical postponement to the end of the sentence. Then Moses' translation, a marvel, captures some of this word, which is etymologically related to the power or wonder. In a stricter and more literal sense, however, this word means a thing to be beheld, from theos time, to spectate, the word of course that rooted the English theatre. The activation of the visual register seems marked and pointed, in contrast to the oral focus of the following sentence, where the Muses give him a divine voice in Alden and Thespian. The rhapsodic performance is thus paused in terms of both spectacle, and intimately focused on the wondrous world star, a thing to be looked at, a thing to be gazed upon, and the auditory, the voice of the rhapsode. Indeed, the parallelism between the staff that is to be beheld, theaton, and the voice that is divine, Thespian, seems to play on traditional association between spectacle, thea, and deity, theos. This association is even closer if we retain the transmitted reading, thean, in place of the editorial correction of Thespian. But it's time to wrap up. I hope I've shown the dynamic performance of the Homeric text, although in many ways distinct, particularly in its brevity, is largely in the spirit of archaic rhapsodic performance, which presented itself in material embodied form and was experienced sensorially. What's more, the interplay of voice, clothing, gesture, and identity manipulation that we detected in Dio was available to rhapsodic performers of Homer too. That performability, indeed, goes to the very heart of the poems themselves. Just as Dio leapt on the altar in imitation of Odysseus on the threshold. So the ancient rhapsode would have immersed himself in that dynamic performance and sung the role of Odysseus, to use that line from Plato's Ion. Now, why does this matter? Well, partly because I think it gives us a truer and more interesting account of how this literature would have been received in antiquity itself. But also because, as I mentioned towards the beginning of my lecture, it's time, I think, to move decisively beyond readings of early epics as abstract and disembodied. They are centrally about the ideological dynamics of the Greek world in formation, in the here and now, in the archaic period. In the next lecture, we'll turn to consider a more thoroughgoing grounding of these poems as we begin to consider Homer and the land. Thank you.
third semiotic marker of the rhapsode as you described it. In the image that you showed us from the base, you emphasized how the book is very impressive, multi-folded, right? It's very much focused on the external display.
Right.
But then, of course, the cloak is described in Odysseus' case, right, and much of the other American examples. It is disguised, right? It's ragged. The point is sort of concealment, not eye-catching the way this beautiful, glorious look would be.
Yeah.
What do you think? How would you sort of explain this dissonance, and is there anything interesting there?
Well, I think, as we all performance, you need elements of the imagination going on. So one of the passages that I was talking about, we have Athena giving Odysseus a pouch, well, a hair, which goes on a really significant afterlife with the cynics. I don't know if we have the same area. But I mean, it's possible that the pair was used in performance, but it's likely that that had to be imagined. And I think the same sort of thing goes on with both the staff and the cloak itself. Even if it is a showy cloak, Plato's Ion claims that the rhapsode did wear with an incredibly showy cloak, it can still be designated as a filthy rag, you can play a role. But more than that, I think there are, particularly obviously the role of the cloak is something that would be worth treating in depth in the way that I did with the staff, because it occurs time and again. We've got a famous story of the disguised Odysseus talking about getting a cloak from Odysseus himself. Which is a really interesting moment because it's Odysseus wearing the disguise, pretending not to be Odysseus, came and you got Odysseus' cloak, and there's something very clever going on there. And one of the best cloak scenes, I think, is towards the end of the book, throughout the book, a couple of times, when Odysseus wraps himself in the pharos when Democles sings his song. Because he doesn't want to be seen crying. They're so ostentatious that the entire audience, Alcinous sees it. So it's simultaneously an act of concealment and an act of display that trades upon the idea that the cloak can be used to, as we know it, to cloak and conceal and so forth. But it is also a fancy act of ostentatious display at the same time. So I think there is an awful lot more that one could do with the cloak, but I don't think the fact that you have a nice cloak means that you can't pretend it's also a shabby cloak.
Thanks, Phil. I don't know whether in your introduction you mentioned sort of idealist, but let's just say it. And from that perspective, right, I mean, what's distinctive and interesting about sort of Homeric poems is their enactment of a particular kind of consciousness. Like that is to say, what's interesting about them is the relationship of the sort of poetic consciousness of the poem to its own objects. And I mean, whether or not one likes that, I mean, one thing that it does is it kind of pushes back on you know, if, you know, what could be said about that idea within the model of the performative tech or gift, right? I mean, is it possible for the Rhapsody to kind of enact that relationship between mind, performance, and its object? And if so, how would it do it? Or is that just, you know, is that just a possibility that doesn't get kind of taken off? The kind of performance tradition. You're interested in because it's mostly about the enactment of sort of dramatic scenes.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. There are two components to my answer. One is that if you think about what Plato says about the function of the rhapsody, it's partly to perform, but it's partly also to be an interpreter of the dianoia, the intention, the ideas of what goes on in the head of the poem itself. And I didn't give very much attention to that, partly because that is something that most people focus on. I think it's absolutely right. I think there are big ideas in these poems. It's not simply about this sort of drama of performance and being but I wouldn't want to make such a sharp distinction between one and the other. I think the problem with the idealist tradition is that it sort of debases and excludes. I thought that we could try and find, I think in the later lecture I will try to do this, try to find a way of exploring big ideas in an embodied way. I'm thinking of collapsing that distinction between body and soul, body and spirit. The other point I make is about the point you made about resisting teleology and resisting collapse into drama. I think what I was doing was reveling in a kind of collapse of the Homeric world into the dramatic world and beyond. And that's why I started with Diana Chrysostom, because our best evidence for role playing is dramatic in part, but it actually gets better and thicker the longer we go through time. So sort of thinking about how sophisticated performance operates, we have quite a lot of evidence, principally in philosophers, but not only in philosophers, for how role playing operates, for how people would stand and say, okay, now I'm going to be Demosthenes at the Battle of Demosthenes before Philip, or Alexander before the Battle of Crassus.
So it's interesting, yeah, maybe I'll, you know, some other ethnic tradition kind of humanize a kind of anti-histrionic performance of ethic within themselves. I mean, Sardar, like Sardar, which does it. There's a kind of humanization of not overdoing the kind of histrionic aspect of human performance, which is interesting.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, I suppose a more challenging text from Nietzsche on this is point would be he sort of works in days. I mean, works in later on the calendar, didactic approach, he doesn't presumably play to the same scheme. So, it could still be performed, but it was still but it can have the same.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this image up because I wanted to sort of go back to the staff here. It just struck me that of the sort of all the nodes that are on this very, apparently once very flourishing staff, there are sort of 18 nodes that sort of give you the number of syllables in a hexameter line in a certain kind of. What's that? What's that?
I think 17 is the highest.
Right, because there couldn't be two in the last. Or you couldn't have a long, short. Yeah. So maybe it's not relevant. But that just that relationship between thinking about the sort of beats in the line, if that were getting represented on the staff, just because the words that are coming out of the mouth there, I don't know if the base is damaged such that there would have been a complete line.
I don't think so, no. No, I don't think that's I've never heard anyone name that. It's yeah, so the first point about the knots on the start, yeah, I think that's I hadn't thought to count up the number of them. And it may be that that's significant to the approximate number of media actors, is not looking at stuff back and forward. And that seems to be coterminous with his half-line of Assassination of Rock. So it seems to be as if there is some sort of game being played with the rhythmical nature of the rock and the rhythmical nature of speech. So I do think it's an interesting image that comes in.
Yeah, that helps resuscitate my point a little bit, I guess. Because I was interested in the examples that you gave us. I think we see the staff being involved in these scenes of sort of some kind of gap between the parents and reality. But we never quite see the stick as sort of standing for something else, or the actual staff being transformed into something else.
No, you don't.
Or being represented as something else.
No, except that, I mean, it depends whether you leave me on things like thunderbolts, for example. I mean, he sort of feels me when Zeus throws the thunderbolt. Does the raptor at that point actually pick up the stick and use it as, I mean, that would be a transformation of the stick into another device. Spears, swords, and so forth. I mean, it seems to me that that's, it's unprovable, but that would be quite odd to have a stick in your hand and just like a spear thing and not do something else.
Well, that's why I was trying to push for a way in this image to see the staff as sort of giving you some kind of representation of the poetic content, or something like that, where it's sort of, there we would have the staff that's sort of standing for something else.
Yes.
In this image. And then, obviously, given that it's sort of particularly playing on this context of poetic performance, it's in this context that the staff becomes something else. It seemed like that way, sort of give you something else to hang a hat on, so to speak.
Yes, yeah, well, thank you for that.
Richard and Jared.
Well, thank you, Tim. Yeah, I want to thank you for the overall thrust of the discussion, which I think is really fascinating and helpful. I do want to urge a bit of caution about the use to which this particular image is being put. And I think also, broadly speaking, there are issues I think could be helpful for thinking about the use of this whole genre of iconography. The whole genre of vase painting iconography. The markers that you were suggesting were indicative of being a rhapsode here, cloak and staff, are probably the most banal and universally present iconographic motifs in vase painting. I mean, everybody wears this kind of mantle. Everybody holds the staff. Usually the staff of that sort, that short staff with the crook at the end, is understood to be a marker of citizen identity, if anything. The words coming out of the mouth are very interesting, but even that doesn't necessarily mark somebody as a rhapsode, because all kinds of people speak poetry in all kinds of contexts. Probably the most distinctive feature here would be the podium that he's standing on, which is a very interesting marker and does suggest that it has to do with public performance, although this gets to the point about this possible complexity of these images. It's something that you find also with statue bases. And it's quite possible there are images where we see people mistaking statues for what they represent. Even that doesn't necessarily mark this figure as being a rhapsode. There are other performing figures who hold staffs that are much closer to what you're talking about, which are usually about the height of a person and don't have those knobs and don't have a little bend at the end. And it's quite distinctive that this person doesn't have it. He looks actually, in some ways the whole point of this image is that the guy doesn't look like anything special. The figure on the reverse, whom you mentioned at the end, is an Aulos player who's wearing an extraordinary garment with checkerboard patterns and all kinds of amazing things. Whether it's consistent with rhapsodic performance to have the accompaniment of the alloy is something that other people can judge better than I. But it seems to me that this is something that's a very complicated image. And it certainly could be parodic, could be ludic, maybe not. But I would just urge that one needs to really look at these things in their iconographic context, in the context of the entire composition, and also not to reduce them to documents of reality, but recognize that the painters themselves are as complicated and as sophisticated in their own way as the very figures like Philostratus or others whom one is wanting to quote and be very alive to their own rhetorical points. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was obviously dependent on other people's identification.
Yeah.
Of this picture, so should be more cautious in that. The code and the staff are identified elsewhere as figures as Rhapsody. Now, maybe
We do have rhapsodes who wear extraordinary cloaks, as are described in the Ion, or who wear very long flowing garments. What's really striking about this one is, and indeed what allows its attribution to the Cleophades painter, is the fact that the folds are like those that we get everywhere else. It's an interesting feature of this. This doesn't invalidate your argument. I'm not trying to really argue against that. I'm kind of trying to say that this sort of document is something that has its own subtleties and nuances, and I feel that could actually enrich the argument in potential ways.
Sure, yes. And the last thing I wanted to do was, to say that this is an inert kind of description of social.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
This question may be a little premature because I haven't heard lectures 2, 3, and 4 yet, but something that I was thinking about, just even in terms of how you're framing this project and these arguments, is this idea of restoring or getting at the materiality and so of the original performances. And you may disagree on this, but something about this is striking me as similar in spirit to the projects of ancient biographers of Homer and the sort of later biographical traditions of Homer, Aeschylus, and so on, which for the most part are silly and ridiculous in a number of different ways. And I'm curious both if you're going to be using that biographical literature anyway, and if you think that that's something that can actually be another avenue for getting back to this context, because there's so much that's been written about some of these particular tales you're talking about, and there's stuff at Astoria and in all sorts of places. And is there anything that you do that and will be doing with that material?
Well, short answer is no. I'm not planning to use any biographical material. And I can see where you're coming from, but I would resist the idea that I'm doing something similar to biographical truth. Partly because of this city, but partly also because what I'm not interested at all in is the figure of the original composer or the process of composition. I was trying to put those questions to one side. I'm not saying that they will never be answered satisfactorily. I'm not saying that they're not really thinking about. But if we think about the performing section, this is a completely downstream. If we think about the Rhapsody as a performance at the time, if we can use all the cues we can internal to the poetry itself to think about how performance would have been enacted, then we get a very different picture. And it's not really about this with the reality in a kind of crudely positivist sense. It's really about a sort of enhanced understanding of poetry itself.
So I guess the question that I was getting at was if you can rehabilitate the biographical material in some ways by suggesting that it can then get at the sort of things that you're interested in. That's the question.
Yes, well, I think probably the curtailment would bear a lot of scrutiny. I think I haven't actually filled the rest of this paper, gone back over it, but I should do it.
Thinking off that question, perhaps this is outside of your focus, but I was wondering what implications these ideas of performativity and embodiment have for us who are not witnessing a rhapsodic performance or even the original, but are reading a text that's been codified and set down in writing and everything. And so how does this affect our reading of it, or even HDD?
I suppose the question is, when you're saying, when you're asking about an ancient, I was trying to think about these poems in performance in the archaic period, when presumably the text, the script is relatively fluid. If we follow John Ballard's model, was not going to do us before alphabetical at one level. But if we do that, then we think about these texts as primarily experienced through Rhapsody performance. And then they get code 5, then they get written down, and then access to them is very different as well. But that's not entirely the question.
I had a couple of questions, monsters, but I'll start with the one you just ended on because I'm really taken by that. And Bailey doesn't get a lot of credit for being about poetry the way the Odyssey does, and that's probably for a reason. But I wonder, I guess I want to ask you more about that. Maybe it's something we're going to speak about more in another lecture, but isn't the Patroclus event of arming himself in Achilles' armor about the failure of the skies that fools even him, right? Fools him, but can't get him all the way there, right? He's not Achilles. And then the same happens when the disguise is put on Hector. He's not Achilles either. You know, on and on it goes. And Achilles himself, well, once he loses his armor, he can't just put on somebody else. Unlike Paris, right? He came to battle without armor. He can just put any old person's armor on. Achilles can, right? And so, because he's the pure thing. There's an undisguisable quality, right? Whereas in the Odyssey you show, you know, Odysseus can even look like him. I mean, it's a whole different dynamic of performance. Is there something about the failure and limitation that might have come out of the way of Rhapsody performing that?
And that's a really interesting question. If there is, it may be that Book 24 resolves it, but then Book 24 is in fact precisely by Hermes with the Raptors. And he comes in and the first thing he does is, being told that things will happen with Hermes and the Raptors, which is the eyes of people. He creates a sort of an eerie gloom over the place. And it's the whole of 24 is overhung with images of not just death, but also sleep and misperception and so forth. He meets Priam, and Priam doesn't recognize him. And then Priam goes to Achilles' tent in disguise, effective disguise, gets in there, and there's that extraordinary simile.
Well, it's guys, I think you're right the first time. He's people can't sort of sleep.
Right. Okay,
Right?
sure, yes. But then when Priam and Achilles meet, there's that extraordinary simile, which is sort of the wrong way around. And after that, they start identifying with each other and they start seeing the world from each other's point of view. And it seems to me that something is certainly going on there with, it's not disguise, but the whole empathic structure is about the ability to see things from outside your own perspective and to see things the other way around. And that seems to be mobilised by the Hermes designer of this misperception. But also that's particularly simile, which, as I say, has leads you to think one thing and then flips around.
And his ability to accept the substance.
Yes,
Which
exactly.
Achilles is introduced to you.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's sort of a secondary part of that to me was you're saying that the simile is a virtuosic performance of showing, it's where you're saying something, look, here's the thing, see how different it is? Well, bam, it's not different, it's the same. Right, and so it's actually the performer kind of reading himself, what a good performer is.
Yeah.
Right, it's taking, in that sense, it would be taking you away from the text. Right, which might help explain why the Odyssey seems to have these more ostentatious.
Reversing.
Can you say, and then I thought you in sort of Rhapsody fashion were making an analogy between how Circe and so on use the Raptos and what how a simile works. Am I right?
I mentioned something very briefly in passing as a form of similitude or resemblance that fits into the, I don't specify exactly how, but it fits into a larger sort of pattern of similitudes that seem to be
I'm curious, I guess this goes back to the question of performance versus sort of performance as drama versus performance in some other sense, and maybe also to get some space. But do you see a distinction, or perhaps, or maybe on the other hand, an overlap between staffs being used as props, so as the staff being used to indicate a certain thing about a character in your imagination or rhapsodic performance, versus the staff merely indicating power or being a tool for projecting emotional powers. So in the text that you've chosen in this section of your series, at least, it seems as though there's a distinction between states that are being used to enact a magical transformation or to sort of indicate, look, I'm not very powerful, versus staffs that are to be leaned on and staffs that are to indicate something sort of specific characterized. And I wonder, maybe this is just an illusion of the sort of slim selection of text that we can cover in one lecture, or maybe there is something where there's a slippage between a staff being used with a prop in acting in sort of rhapsodic performance versus a staff being used merely to intensify emotion bodily through the language.
Where, in that discussion, where would you put the Ramdos?
I'm not sure. I don't know what you're cursing. No, that's part of what I'm asking you. I'm asking whether there's a distinction or whether there's kind of a slippage and overlap.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because you're asking about the function of this thing as a tool, and I mean I was seeing it as an extension of the body, and body which is simultaneously, I suppose, I mean it can be actually your own body, and as you say, if you are king and you carry a scepter. That's because the scepter is, in a sense, part of you, it's part of your functions. But you can also see it as a misleading semantic trick that deceives people. And this is, yeah, I think this is a really interesting, almost kind of physical question, where boundaries are starting to start and stop. But I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer that yet. But I mean, it gels with that. I mean, these are really interesting. The distributed personhood is, of course, the ability to see the human subject as manifested in objects that are kind of connected to you.
Thanks so much, Tim. I really enjoyed the talk. And my question is quite connected to the last one, actually, in that on the one hand, I love the idea of embodiment, and I think the project of looking for signs of it is exciting. But I'm just worried about the fluidity of the staff, on the one hand. That so we've got this staff as an image of authority and power. We've got the passive Hesiod, and then there's the Rabdos of Circe, and the connection made there really allows you to say, well, the staff is, allowing the rhapsode to, to change who he is, and change the image that the listeners are seeing or imagining. But if, on the other hand, the staff is so fluid that it can also be the staff of the fool, I just feel it gets really unstable and blurry. How can we confidently say, is there enough to say that it would be given kind of special authority on the one hand by the listeners, but also have this great kind of breadth of kind of possible semiotic significance on the other? And kind of connected to that, I was also wondering about other props, just the possibility of, gesturing to a child in the, who's listening, or picking up stones from the ground. The purse you gave, the imaginary purse, was an example. And so I'm just kind of grappling with what makes the staff special.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. What makes the staff special, I suppose, is that he is consistently associated with the rhapsode. The worry about fluidity, I'm less worried about it than you are, because what I'm not trying to do is map out all of the various functions of the staff in all these guises in the American poems. What I'm doing is I'm starting from the point that it was the thing that the rhapsode had. And if you think of it in those terms, then every time it begins in the poem, it's playing a role just as the speaker is playing a role, as the speaker is role, and the staff can also play a role in Agamemnon's sketch or Circe's Rabdos and so forth. So in that sense, what stopped it from being simply a sort of kaleidoscopic let's go through another passage about demographics, is the fact that all of these are indexed to the numerical forms or indexed by the numerical forms. So, so yeah, I mean, I think it is clearly the case that there are an awful lot of sticks. That seems to me to be, I mean, a stick is not just any old token. It seems to me that there are a lot of sticks in society because that's what the sort of the forms of scenario demands. You've got a limited plot. Now, as to your other question about whether you could extend to the ground or whether you could gesture to somebody, I'm sure there's an awful lot of gesture as part of advertising about this. It would be interesting to know how a gesture like Roger Ida, for example, would be discarded or something like that, would actually be signalled through probably access. There's nothing to rule out a much more dynamic forms, but who knows how much they, the baby matches that we've done. The problem is that we're then in a realm of absolute speculation. And despite what I didn't really want to go into the realm of absolute speculation, I did want to link it to the central figures.
Yeah, so there's rhapsodic performance here and there's sophistic performance, and they seem to sort of run together with Dio and with Plato's Ion, maybe. The rhapsode there can kind of seem like the sophist elsewhere as someone who's doing these like tricky things. And then Plato, of course, writes a different kind of thing, which you can sit down and read it, or you could like read it a dialogue with other people, but it doesn't seem to lend itself to the sort of rhapsodic, sophistic treatment. So could you say anything about sort of whether, like, by writing dialogues, Plato, is he breaking free of something, or is he just sort of falling into other concerns with the materiality that's behind the work?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Plato, of course, is a root of the idealist tradition of Marx talking about earlier. In one sense, he doesn't really want anything to be material or anything to be profitable. He sets himself precisely against Ion, not just in terms of the show representation and performance and so forth, but also things the public dimension of that teaching, which contrasts with Plato's or Socrates' very private sort of intellectual purpose. But I don't really have a better answer to this than the one that's been up around since the 80s, which is in effect that sort of unravels when people start thinking about the dramatic nature of these dialogues themselves and what Plato actually thought he was doing when he wrote stuff that decried the dramatic whilst actually using the dramatic mode. I don't really know. Do you have, is there something behind this? Do you have a thesis here? Is that an answer of thought?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder maybe if we also think of tragedy as having something that rhapsodic performance doesn't have. I guess that's sort of obvious, but what exactly is that if there is in fact something? I mean, it seems relevant that Plato chooses dialogues and not sort of like sophistic discourses, or even something much looser like Xenophon's Memorabilia, where sort of like what the dramatic scene is there is a lot less clear. Like the performance was first which came out as much characters.
Yeah, I mean, it is significant to Plato choosing this form. Plato does seem to have what you call that sort of dialectic relationship with tragedy in some form. And it's the third term here might be Ion as the rhapsode, who is called a Hippocrates, an actor within the text, and his term has been much picked over because, according to one theory at least, the word Hippocrates originally meant as an interpreter or an expounder, so it came from rhapsodic performance. The rhapsodes would do a bit of, the scenario described in Ion, where Rhapsody does a bit of performance and then does a bit of expounding and so forth. And that is the hypocrisis. And that then developed into a metaphor of John. That's one, it's one of the personal version of it. But yeah, I mean, how we put all of these together, how we put the role playing that goes on within Plato and the famous evanescence of Platonic author himself on the scenario. It's a question for another day.
There are 3 more questions, but I've been urged, very quiet and polite by Mark, that it is we're approaching upon 7 o'clock. And since there will be many other opportunities to engage with kids,